correct.
You're employed as the Director of Town Planning at Bilfinger GBA.
Correct.
And you've been doing that since 2013. You hold a degree in postgraduate diploma in town planning. You've been a planning practitioner since 2003, a member of the Royal Town Planning Institute since 2005.
That's correct. That's correct.
You've been advising the landowner of the appeal site on planning matters since 2015, including the submission of the planning application to which you refer in your evidence. Is that right?
That's correct.
There's more about your experience, a little bit more in your main proof of evidence. So that's fine. But we don't take up time with that. But you have advised on discovery, discovery part, haven't you?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. I'm looking at your summary proof of evidence, and you tell us in 1.5 what you're going to do. And in your summary, the first thing you do is have a heading section 2, the appeal sites. Just read the first 2 paragraphs, would you?
The appeal sites form part of a former airfield known as Manston Airport, a description of which is provided in my main proof of evidence. The airport closed in 2014 due to lack of viability.
Right, if we just look at your main proof of evidence, not to ask you to write it, to read it out, I'm sorry, but on page 5 in your main proof, there's a description of the appeal sites that you refer to the planning statement where there's a fuller description. That's your 2.2, is that right?
That's correct.
And that's your reference to CD 5.4. And then you summarise what you call the key stages and milestones relevant to the site's history.
Yes.
That's in paragraph 2.4, and that goes on for a couple of pages to Roman numeral 15 on page 7.
Mm-hmm.
All right? Now, I'm not going to ask you to read that out, but what I do want to ask you about is this, particularly what you say in 2.2 of your summary, the airport closed in 2014 due to lack of viability. And because, I'll put it quite bluntly, Mr. Yerrill's rebuttal evidence puts into question the integrity of those who acquired the airport and then proceeded to close it down in late 2013, up to the middle of 2014. I'm going to ask you, please, to explain your understanding of working on instructions. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
What the owners did when, as I think it's when they bought the site in 2013, in terms of whether or not they gave any real consideration to the possible continuation, as it was then, of the airport use.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not asking for a huge amount of detail, but just an overview of whether they did anything and if they did, what it was.
Okay. My understanding is that in December 2013, the site was bought by Manston Skyport, the parent company of which is also the owner of Stagecoach, so one of the UK's largest transport providers, so experienced in the sector. I'm told that they had every intention of running the site as an airport and made significant efforts to do so. Firstly, they appointed a turnaround team. Now, the role of this turnaround team was to make the airport a viable, successful airport. The team included Mr. Tony Freudman, whom I understand is now part of the River Oak team. Also include Alan McKinnon, an experienced financial accountant, and also a gentleman called Alistair Welsh, who is an aviation specialist. Welsh. W-E-L-S-C-H.
No, C-H.
I understand that Alistair previously worked in a senior position at Stansted Airport. He was also brought over to Southend Airport, and he was partly responsible for successfully turning around that airport. Now, my understanding is that that team undertook a number of actions, including approaching low-cost carriers, people like Ryanair, EasyJet and so on, in order to test and hopefully exploit the opportunity to bring passenger services onto the site. We also investigated the freight sector. An example of that is they met with and investigated the potential to relocate BA World Cargo from Stansted. But my understanding is that the airport incurred substantive losses. and in May 2014 it closed on the basis that they felt there was no prospect of making it viable. Now, a key point to note is that set of owners followed on from two previous owners who were also experienced in running airports and also failed to make Manston Airport a viable success. Then, over the course of 2014, in the autumn of 2014, the owners engaged with Chris Musgrave and Trevor Gardner as regeneration specialists, and they were brought onto the team and brought into the ownership mechanism to work up what I call a plan B for the site. So in the context that we had 300 hectares of mostly previously developed vacant land, they were brought on to work up an alternative proposition that would repurpose the site in the context of the aviation use being demonstrably not viable. So 2.3. In the period 2014 to 2016, Thanet District Council explored the possibility of using a compulsory purchase order to acquire the site as a means of reopening it as an airport. But despite repeated efforts, it failed to secure a suitable indemnity partner. In October 2016, the Council published the results of an independent report known as the Avia Report. That was commissioned to form part of the evidence base for the emerging local plan, which concluded that operations at Manston are very unlikely to be financially viable in the longer term, and almost certainly not possible in the period to 2031. The current landowner now intends to redevelop the site for residential-led mixed-use development. As part of this intent, planning applications for the change of use of buildings 1 to 4 that are the subject of this inquiry were submitted on 23rd of May 2015. The application for Building 2 was reported to the Council's Planning Committee 3 times in the period August to October 2015, each time with an officer recommendation for approval.
Then I'm going to interrupt you because I didn't read this out. That was the ground of refusal that was given at the time, and of course that's no longer relied on, as it were, by the Council, withdrawn their objection. And I think we can actually pass on to 2.8 feet in your summary.
Other recent planning history of relevance to the appeals includes the following. In May 2016, the current landowner submitted a hybrid planning application for the comprehensive redevelopment of the whole airfield site for residential-led mixed-use development, including up to 2,500 homes and a substantial employment element. This application is pending determination. The appeal schemes are entirely consistent with this application. Part of the former airfield site is subject to a special development order, which allows for the stationing of goods vehicles and associated development for a temporary period until end 2017, in conjunction with Operation Stack. The extent of the land affected by the order does not include the appeal sites. A private party, River Oak, has entered into pre-application discussions with the Planning Inspectorate with the intention of seeking a Development Consent Order, DCO, to reopen the airport. The Planning Inspectorate's website indicates that the anticipated submission date is Q2 2017.
Okay, thanks. I mean, the evidence now is that it's anticipated or hoped that the application will be made in July, I think, Mr. Yerrell's, one of Mr. Yerrell's appendices. Just in relation to your Appendix 1, which is Master Plan Planning Application Summary. So this is a document, is it? So I'm looking at the first page of Appendix 1. This is a document that's been submitted as part of the hybrid planning application.
That's correct. Its purpose is to provide a summary and overview of the hybrid application that's currently pending determination.
And is there additional material still to be submitted in relation to that application?
There is some further environmental impact assessment and transport assessment work that's currently being completed, which is to be submitted as an addendum in the next couple of weeks or so.
And is there an anticipated determination date?
We are anticipating that this planning application will be taken to Thanet District Council's Planning Committee early summer.
Is the British climate being such? These expressions of summer and all right.
May, June.
May, June time. Okay, thank you. I don't think we need to spend a lot of time on this. I just thought I might invite attention, though, to the master plan. If one goes within Appendix 1, which itself has appendices to the development specification, isn't there?
That's correct.
Description of proposed development, employment, residential, retail, education, sport and recreation and hotel, open space landscaping, car parking, infrastructure and other work. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Then on the next page we've got development quantum, which we've mentioned in summary in your reference already.
Yes.
Then there's a table about change of use for retained existing buildings. And then if you go on a few more pages, there's what looks like an aerial photograph onto which has been superimposed the proposed development, and it's called Illustrative Master Plan.
On the A3 one.
Well, it's mine. So it looks like it's actually before those drawings, I think. It looks like this.
Is that which appendix is that?
It's still in Appendix 1 to the proof.
Yes, but is it appendix A or the actual document?
It is Appendix A is the development specification, then he's moved on to Appendix B that has the key plans in it.
So there's another sheet saying Appendix B,
Key plans, I do. These are the A3 ones, yeah.
Oh, okay, you've got an A3. That gives it should be checking one of those.
Yes,
Yes, that is. I mean, do you want to very briefly explain in broad terms what the proposal is for by reference?
Yes, so it's a hybrid plan application, and this is typical. Parts of the application are submitted in full details, and the remainder is in outline. The details which approve the source is effectively the development specification that you have in your pack. And in respect to the relevant part to this application is that permission is sought for the change of uses of buildings 2 and 3, and they're referred to as B2 and B3 in that table 2.2.
About what's going to happen to the appeal building, so we'll deal with that now. Fine, thank you.
Okay, so buildings 2 and 3, which are referred to as B2 and B3 in table 2.2, and also the plans.
Page 2 of this appendix.
Yep.
Or of the previous appendix. B2 is
Building 2.
Have that on page 2 of appendix A to this document.
Appendix A.
It's just a couple of pages back from the plans.
Yeah.
Table
2.2.
Yeah.
Change of use for retained. Is that what you're referring to?
That's what I'm referring to, yes.
Building B2 what?
Building 2, for the purposes of this appeal.
Yeah.
Building B3 is building 3 for the purposes of this appeal. And what this table does is it allows for the change of use of those existing buildings to B1C, B2 and B8. Now that is consistent with what has been proposed by the appeals we have before us today. Now, in respect to buildings 1 and 4, there is a plan, if you flick through, which is called the Parameter Plan 6, Demolition and Retention. Now, buildings 1 and 4...
Wait a minute, we'll find it.
Sorry.
The parameter plan, which number parameter plan?
6.
Which appendix are we in?
We're now in the B again, we're back to the
B.
plans. And if you'll find this after a short while, that there's some parameter plans 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. If you look in the bottom right hand corner.
It'll be the last one, number 6.
Yeah, hold on. Can you see it? Can you see that?
These are the ones that are divided into zones, or there's a number of drawings here.
I mean, parameter plan
That's the one you're looking at.
Right, go on.
So you'll note that building B2 and B3 are coloured in that sort of greeny browny colour,
Yeah.
and that means the buildings are to be retained, and buildings what are referred to on this plan as B1 and B4, which is 1 and 4 for the purposes of the appeal, they are identified as existing buildings to be demolished. So
Okay, so B1's in the middle of the housing.
absolutely. Now, if you flip back to the indicative master plan, which is the second plan, which is that one superimposed on an aerial photograph. Now, the purpose of this plan is to illustrate one way in which the development could be laid out. Now, if you see where there's a title in capitals called employment, you'll see buildings B2 and B3 in brown, set within an employment area, and that's the anticipation that those buildings would be retained. And if you move to the east, in the sort of central of what is basically a residential area, that's where building 1 is currently located. So that demonstrates how that building will be removed to make way for residential development.
Good. Well, that's all we need to do on that. I'll return to your summary of it.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so page 4 of the summary evidence, section 3 proposed development, I think we can take that as read. We just note that you've included as appendix 2 of your main proof of evidence list of the plans or schedule of the plans which approve the store. That's all agreed, there's no...
Yeah, it's also set out in stage of common ground.
It's also in state of common ground, thank you. Then, grounds of appeal. Now, obviously your evidence still addresses the reason for refusal, though that's been withdrawn, because it raises certain issues that the executive considers to be relevant. I'm going to ask you to read 4.1 and 4.2.
The appeal for building 2 is submitted on the basis of the local planning authority's refusal of the application. I consider the single reason for refusal to be invalid on the basis that local plan policies safeguarding the airport use are out of date. The buildings are not essential for airport use. The proposal will not prejudice the potential future operation of an airport, and speculation regarding a possible future airport use is not a valid reason for refusal. The appeals for buildings 1, 3 and 4 are made on the basis of non-determination. The grounds for the appeal are as per building 2, but also that the proposals are not likely to give rise to any significant harm, constitute sustainable economic development, will increase local employment, and ensure provision of low-level activity on the site while the future of the site is being determined.
Then you identify the relevant planning framework, the MPPF, principally, this is a summary, state policies of the planning local plan, and the proposed revisions of the preferred options draft planning local plan, that's SPO 5.
Yes.
And then you've gone in your summary to consider each of the main issues that the inspections identified. And so the first is the relevant policy context. Adopted in emerging local plan policies compliant with MPPF and weight to be given. I'll let you read on for quite a while again if I may, and then I will have a question on after 6.10.
Okay.
Read on.
The former airfield site is subject to 3 site-specific safe policies in the 2006 Thanet Local Plan, EC2, EC4 and EC5, and is subject to designations where policies CC1 and CC2 apply. However, I consider the principal adopted local plan policies relevant to the appeals to be limited to policies EC4 and CC1. I consider that policy EC4 should carry limited weight in decision making on the basis that It is time expired. It is based on an evidence base that has been proven by actual events to be incorrect. There has been a material change in site-specific circumstances since the policy was adopted, which indicates that the policy objectives are unlikely to be deliverable. It was adopted prior to the publication of the NPPF and is inconsistent with the NPPF. And the local planning authority has agreed that there is insufficient evidence currently to justify full weight to be attributed to the policy. I consider policy CC1 to be relevant to the Building 2 appeal only, as the other proposals do not include any operational development. It is my view that the policy is not consistent with the NPPF and should therefore carry limited weight in decision making on the following grounds. It is negatively worded. It is unnecessarily restrictive. The NPPF requires a more refined approach than the blanket protection of all land outside of settlement boundaries. The NPPF encourages the reuse of previously developed land, including outside of settlement boundaries. And the NPPF supports the sustainable growth of business/enterprise in rural areas through the reuse of existing and development of new buildings.
There's nothing really between you and Mr. Chembry, I think, on CC1.
No, I think we're in agreement.
But the CC4 there is.
The Council is currently consulting on proposed revisions to the 2015 Preferred Options Draft Local Plan, where site-specific policy SP05 is of particular relevance. We consider that no weight should be given to the original 2015 draft of this policy on the grounds that the policy is not justified nor capable of being effective. However, the revised 2017 draft policy is based upon a robust evidence base and therefore should be afforded some weight in decision making.
Okay, we'll probably come back to that in a minute, but just read on to the next issue is whether the use of the buildings for non-airport related use is acceptable having regard to local and national policy.
On the basis of the above, it is my opinion that there are no up-to-date local plan policies that control the use of the buildings. I consider that some, albeit limited, weight should be afforded to the revised draft local plan policy SP05, which supports the provision of up to 85,000 square metres of employment floor space, among other uses, on the former airfield site, including the appeal sites. This should be considered alongside the NPPF, particularly the presumption in favour of sustainable development at paragraph 14. There are no specific NPPF policies that indicate that the change of use should be restricted. Therefore, it falls to a balanced judgment between the benefits and disbenefits of the scheme to determine acceptability, in the context of the NPPF as a whole. It is my view that the NPPF is overwhelmingly supportive of the development, with key considerations including paragraphs 17, 22, 28. Other material considerations are: there is material evidence that indicates that it is unlikely that the wider site will reopen as an airport in the short or even longer term. The buildings are suitable for the proposed uses, and there is a need for this type of accommodation in the district. The appeal proposals have the capacity to accommodate an estimated 320 jobs. The appeal sites are predominantly vacant. Introducing activity would likely help ensure site security and the avoidance of antisocial behaviour. And the use of the former airfield site for non-airport related use has already been confirmed as acceptable, in principle, by virtue of the Operation Stack SDO. On this basis, it is my view that there are clear benefits associated with the proposed development and no obvious disbenefits. This is in the context that the proposed development is in accordance with the policies of the NPPF as a whole and therefore should be granted plan permission in line with NPPF Para 14.
Right, now I want you to go now to your proof of evidence, that is your main proof of evidence. Paragraph 6.9. On page 24. Alright, we got that. Now this contains a list of things that you say material changes in site-specific circumstances since the policy was adopted in EC4, which in your view indicates the policy objectives are
that remains my position.
And why? Just explain why that is.
Of course. Just to wind back slightly, when we prepared the proof of evidence, the only information that we had available to us regarding River Oaks proposals comprised the informal community consultation brochure, the EIA scoping report, and the appeal statement prepared by RPS. And I think it's entirely appropriate at that point of time, on the basis of that very limited information, and in the context of the reasons set out in paragraphs 6.8 to 6.9 of my proof, I think it reasonable to reach an opinion that this did not demonstrate that their proposals had a reasonable prospect of being deliverable. Now, since then, it's clear that River Oak have progressed a little bit further with their proposals, and on the basis of the information available to us, this comprises preparing a draft statement of community consultation, undertaking some site visits for the purpose of baseline environmental survey work, and the preparation of some material regarding the commercial viability of their proposition. Now, while I've clearly made progress, it's clear to me that this is very much feasibility stage work only, and that there remains an awful lot of work to do. For instance, there's been no EIA, there's been no transport assessment, there's been no formal community consultation. And furthermore, and in my view, this is critical, bearing in mind that the deliverability of their scheme is dependent on the compulsory acquisition of the land, there's no detail regarding the compelling public interest case and their ability to deliver, i.e. fund, the scheme itself, which would be necessary to justify the compulsory purchase powers necessary that they're seeking as part of the DCA. So, as a consequence, I maintain my view as set out at 6.9e that there's no evidence to show that recommencing use of the airport has a reasonable prospect of being deliverable in practice on the basis of the evidence we have available to us today. But it cannot be ruled out.
Well, that was my next question. So one puts the question in a slightly different way, as I indeed, I mean, you answered the question. I mean, but just be absolutely clear, do you or do you not accept that the possible resumption of airport use cannot be ruled out as things stand?
It's possible, and so therefore it can't be ruled out.
All right. And what's your view on this question of whether that possibility, that is the possible resumption of an airport use, might be materially prejudiced if the appeals were allowed? What's your view? Is that a relevant matter for the inspector to consider or not?
Well, in my opinion, whether or not the appeals being allowed could prejudice either the River Oak proposal or equally Stonehill Park's proposal, which you've got a planning application planning determination. Both are equally important, and in my opinion, it's not necessary for us to reach a conclusive view on whether or not either of these schemes are deliverable as part of this inquiry, because that is a matter for the subsequent DCO and the subsequent Stonehill Park plan application. The key issue for this inquiry is the matter of prejudice, like you point out, and whether or not the appeal schemes would prejudice the potential future use of the site as an airport, or indeed as a residential-led mixed-use development. And in my opinion, the proposals before us today will not prejudice either of those alternative propositions. Starting with the River Oak proposal, River Oak has confirmed today that it tends to compulsorily acquire the entire airfield site, and that will provide vacant possession of the appeal sites. As a consequence, allowing the change of use of these buildings is just not capable of prejudicing a future airport use. And as previously discussed a couple of minutes ago, the proposals are entirely consistent with the Stonehill Park master plan, and therefore, as a consequence, allowing these appeals today is not capable of prejudicing the implementation of the Stonehill Park proposals. So in either way, either scenario, there is no prejudice. And to me, that is the principal planning issue that we should be tackling.
You really cover much of that ground, actually, in your summary at paragraph 611 to 614. Is there anything else in 611 to 614 that you want to say? Because to head into that little section is whether the proposals would compromise future aviation use of the airport.
I think the only other point that was dealt with as part of Andrew Shrewsbury's evidence is if there was a scenario where the appeals were allowed and they flipped to employment uses, that there is no evidence to suggest that those uses cannot exist in a perfectly acceptable manner alongside an aviation use on the rest of the airfield site. Indeed, on the site you will notice that there is an existing comparable where the MOD occupy a building that I understand used to be part of the airfield within what's described as the airside fence, but since the early 90s at least, it has been fenced off and effectively acts as a bite out of the airfield itself. And that building is immediately adjacent to Building 3. So as far as I'm concerned, there's an existing precedent which has been in place for over 25 years, which is incredibly comparable to the appeal scheme you have before you today.
Right, let's move on. I'm in the middle of page 7 of your summary, whether the proposal would create additional need for buildings in the countryside were airport operations to resume. Will you read that?
No. Well, the answer to the question is no. As already explained, recommencing aviation uses would be dependent on compulsory acquisition of the airport site. This would result in vacant possession of the whole airport site, including the appeal buildings. Notwithstanding this, in a scenario where these buildings continued their new use alongside the new airport use, there is no evidence to suggest what, if any, additional need for new buildings might be generated. Any suggestion otherwise would be speculative. I also note that the principle of additional physical developments on the airport site, regardless of its intended use, is supported by adopted local plan policy EC2 and draft policy SP05. Finally, I note that there are no policies in the local plan that restrict the change of use of existing buildings in the countryside.
Right, then we've got the question whether alternative employment land exists elsewhere. As far as land is concerned, what's your position on whether there's alternatives? Well, these are buildings, not land, so I couldn't leave out the word alternative. Whether there is available in the district land for employment development.
Okay, my opinion is there is extensive employment land available in the district, and the great example is Manston Business Park, which is immediately adjacent to the site.
But buildings, because the appeal building to building, may be a different matter. Let me ask you from 619 and 620, then I will come to other matters on that.
In my view, the availability of employment premises is more relevant than the availability of land, since the appeal buildings will be made available, if the appeals are allowed, to meet the immediate needs of local and other businesses. Available evidence indicates quantitative and qualitative deficiencies with the supply of employment premises in the district. This has been confirmed in practice by a local business who has been unable to secure new industrial premises in the district to enable their business to expand, and endorsed by the Council's Head of Economic Development and Regeneration.
Are you referring in the second sentence to the
Instrade.
Who've gone to Discovery Park?
That's correct. That's correct.
You know, they've gone somewhere else, so they're obviously going to have a requirement period. The reference to Council's Head of Economic Development and Regeneration is the paragraph in those committee reports, is it, that I put to Ms. Shembry earlier?
That's correct.
Right, so we don't go to those. I think I'm just going to ask you then about Ms. Shembry's rebuttal appendices and inquiry document 8. I hope we can take this pretty skinny because I don't need you to go through all the points that I've already put to Ms. Shembry. But nevertheless, I don't think I can just put the document in without asking you something about it.
Sure.
Have you got inquiry document 8?
Yes, I do.
Have they got in relation to the first of those sites? Barwick Road, David Kent development land.
Yeah.
I mean, what's your understanding about whether the buildings that are on the land, there are existing vacant industrial buildings surrounded by Manston, are currently available? That's I think, probably the question I want to ask about that.
My understanding from the particulars is that the existing buildings have been subject to damage, and therefore, as a consequence, they're not immediately occupiable. Right.
Just say you don't know.
My understanding is the site has been marketed as a residential development site that benefits from planning permission for 220 homes. So on that basis, to me, it's a resi development site, not an employment premises opportunity.
Okay. All right, but we don't need to look at the particular any further. The panel business part, I put to Shembury that the development hadn't actually been built. Those are my instructions. What's your understanding?
My understanding is that the images on this page are either CGIs or taken from somewhere else, and there are in fact no buildings on this site.
That's the hammer.
Yeah.
So those pictures don't actually relate to the...
That's my understanding.
They appear to be of this site, because there aren't any buildings.
Yeah.
I mean, presumably they're intended to indicate what they will, the sort of quality they'll be.
Yeah. Sort of thing you might find in a design access statement.
Right, we don't know that. All right, then the next one is Manston.
Sorry, we don't know whether they're built or not, or we do know.
There are no buildings there,
No.
so they haven't been built.
Well, I was saying we didn't know whether they came to the design and access.
Oh.
So the witness said they might go, which they might.
Right. There's another picture there, isn't it, as well, which looks like some older looking building.
Getting on the buildings that are shown on the first
No.
one.
I don't know what, do you know what those buildings are?
No, I don't. All I'm told is there are no buildings on the site, so
This is a sandwich, is it?
Well, it's near, sorry, I beg your pardon, I shouldn't ask the question. You said, where's Woodensborough?
I believe it's near Sandwich. I'm not entirely 100% sure.
Can you find out?
I could find
Tell
out.
the inspector in the morning.
Yep, that's fine.
Okay. Manston Business Park, then if we move on to that, what's your understanding position in terms of availability of units?
Okay, of units, my understanding is that there are 11 available units. Units 1 to 10 extend to 1,000 square foot, and unit 11 extends to 3,000 square foot. So, in round numbers, 100 square metres or 300 square metres. So they're of a very different size to what would become available through these units.
1 to 10 are 100, did you say 100 square metres?
1,000 square feet.
1,000 square metres, is that all of them or each?
No, each individual unit is 1,000 square foot. So round numbers, about 100 square metres.
100 square metres, thank you. Okay. And that's what's available at the moment?
Yes, alongside development land.
Yeah, I'm asking about buildings.
Yeah.
I mean, you've been asked to visit that and...
I have actually seen
Been
it.
to it already.
I've driven around, well,
Alright.
I haven't driven around the actual business park, but I've driven past it.
Yeah, okay. Well, anything to add on that if you want to say?
No, just in respect to the previous question, looking at my other notes, Hamel is in a place called Woodensborough, which is near Sandwich. So Sandwich is 5, 6, 7 miles from the Manston site.
But how far is Woodensborough from Sandwich?
That's the bit I can't tell you.
Yeah, well, it says it's an accessible rural location. Any Asian person talks heavily about the word accessible anyway, it's in a rural location. I can come back to that. Manston Business Park done that. Now, then we've got the former Barwick site at Dover.
Yeah.
And we've got this piece of fruit on this orange flag, that's the one we're talking about. Yeah, I think I put to Ms. Shembury that the site remains land rather than buildings. What's your understanding?
Yeah, it's my understanding that it's by the Whitelist Business Park over in Dover, and it's development land.
Okay. And then on we go to Discovery Park. You have to
That's correct.
And so the other offices and laboratory type of space available on the market at the moment?
Yeah, Discovery Park has extensive areas of offices and lab space which is available to let. However, it has no industrial accommodation to let. It does have some industrial accommodation, but that is fully occupied. It also has development land, which could be developed pursuant to the outline consent, but no buildings that are vacant at the moment.
Right, then I go on to the Appendix 2 premise. It all says it's industrial park. And the description says that will comprise and units will be provided. What's your understanding? Is there a building here or not?
My understanding is that the construction of these buildings has not yet commenced, nor is there an anticipated date when that might happen.
Okay, so that's land, not buildings.
That's land, not buildings.
The next one is land let in Old Timber Industrial Estate. That we've got a photograph of it.
As the photo indicates, this is outdoor open storage. It's not a building.
Okay, well the description refers to the variety of use including building storage, container storage or large machinery in the open blessed. Anything else to say about that?
Nope.
Then the last one is this industrial shed in Canterbury. Yes?
I'm reliably informed that this building does exist, that it extends to around 969 square metres. As the photograph indicates, it's not of the greatest of quality. Nonetheless, it is available and it can fulfil a purpose. However, I do note that this building's 18.5 miles from this site, and according to the AA, it's a 32-minute drive outside of peak hour. So if this really is the only available premise anywhere near this site, it does suggest there's a shortage in supply.
It's available, but it's not substantial. It's about 18 miles.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Right, that's all on that. Before I ask one or two other questions, I just want to ask you about the condition of the buildings on the appeal site, actually.
Yeah.
What's your understanding? It's been suggested that they, or some of them, 1 and 3 in particular, I think it's been suggested, might or would require substantial investment and work before they could be used. What would you say about that?
All 4 buildings are ready for occupation immediately, in that they're all watertight and they're all securable. Now, typically, an occupier may want to make some amendments to those buildings or undertake some works, but as of today, we can occupy those buildings immediately.
Occupy them for what purposes?
In my view, they're suitable for a range of industrial type uses that fall within use classes of B1, C, B2 and B8 as proposed in the appeal.
Okay, thank you. Then I want to ask you, finally, and then we're nearly done, but one point which I'll mention, about, well actually yes, I was going to say about the benefits of the appeal proposed in my agree, but I think if I ask you the question, why were these applications submitted by the appellant? That might come out in the answer, so you have to answer that question.
Yes, that's fine. As you're aware, the airport site has been effectively vacant since May 2014. It accommodates a number of buildings that are similar to just an industrial shed, and therefore were considered suitable for reuse for a range of employment purposes. And it's in the context of evidence of a lack of supply of certain types of employment premises in the district. And this point is evidenced by direct approaches from local businesses to the landowner. And an example is the letter from Instro Position, which is enclosed at CD 2.4, and the note from Powermain, another local business, enclosed at CD 4.3, explaining that they've been unable to secure premises in the district to accommodate their businesses. This is alongside confirmation from the local authority's Head of Economic Development and Regeneration, and this point was confirmed at committees in August, September and October 2015 in respect of Building 2. And he confirmed that there was an occupying need for employment premises like Building 2 but that there were no existing premises available at the district's employment sites to meet this need. Further to this, the TDC Economic and Employment Assessment suggests that vacancy levels are very low in the district, and that's discussed at CD 14.1. And then in a more practical sense, this demonstrable demand was coupled with an aspiration to introduce some form of activity onto the site during the interim period while longer term redevelopment proposals were worked up. Quite simply, this is to assist with the security of the site and to prevent antisocial behaviour that can often arise on large, empty, vacant sites. Mr. Nunner, you've been blinded by the sun. Would you like us to do something with
No,
it?
I'm fine.
Okay.
Let's get a bit of sun.
Other matters you addressed, TPO and the transport position statement, I think that the site can be adequately, the building to be accessed adequately. I'm going to ask you to read your conclusion.
The appeal proposals seek a modest reuse of 4 existing buildings which are currently vacant, including one small extension. The local planning authority has no objection to the proposals. I am aware of River Oak's intention to apply for a DCO to recommence use of the site as an airport, and their limited progress on this to date. However, it is impossible to see how the appeal proposals could prejudice future reuse of the airport, which would be dependent upon compulsory acquisition of the site, including the appeal buildings, in any event. Upon approval, the proposals will provide useful, readily available accommodation for businesses for which there is a gap in provision within the district. The proposals will result in some modest economic benefit in an area of significant economic deprivation. The appeal should therefore be allowed.
That conclusion is indeed subject to the point I made earlier, which was I'd like to have a chance to speak to Ms. Wilson and see if there are any other points. The one that I think is the most likely candidate for further evidence, although it may not be necessary, is the approach to the development plan. And in the light of what Ms. Shirley said this afternoon, in answer to me and in answer to you. So it may be that we'll want to come back on that, but it may be we won't. But subject to that and any other points, that completes the
Thank you. Very helpful. I would suggest probably that we start the examination, cross-examination probably tomorrow, unless you feel strongly the other way.
No, so that it seems very sensible that we force those now to I think the only matter that we need to... The only matter that we need to, I suppose, just address is what time we start, because I know that you said that I think Sir Roger Gale and one other is coming tomorrow at 10 o'clock.
Well, Sir Roger Gale did want to come in at 10
Yes.
tomorrow to address the inquiry. I'm not quite sure what his stance is on this and what points he wants to make.
Yes.
This apparently was that day, tomorrow was the only day that
Yes.
he was available.
That's absolutely...
So I mean, it may well be that we hear Sir Roger Gale at 10 or shortly
Yes.
thereafter, and then we
Move to cross-examination.
I'm not sure there was anyone else who wanted to
I
speak.
thought there was one you mentioned something else.
Yes.
Sorry, somebody's got their hand up there.
Yeah, I was the one who did ask you the other day.
You were the gentleman.
Yes. Oh, yes. Are you available tomorrow to speak? Are you? What's your interest? Are you in favour of the appeal scheme or?
I'm opposed to the appeal. I'm lived in Manston all my life. I'm past chairman of the parish council.
Indeed. Yes, I remember, sir. Yes, I do remember you mentioned. Yes, that's right. So we could hear from you after Sir Roger, if that suits you.
That's fine.
Yes. So hopefully, with any luck, we could get on to cross-examination, 10:30 or something of that sort of nature.
Yeah, the same point, somebody cross-examination break, this gentleman comes in, that won't work.
No, so I mean, if Sir Roger is here at 10, which is I hope what he will be, and then we can hear from you, sir, after